There was a man who we mentioned last week. He's from Bermuda.
Clyde Best, a young man with exciting potential.
Clyde Best, 19 years of age.
Interesting player, number 11, Clyde Best, the Bermudan.
A future West Ham star without any doubt, like Goliath, tremendous physique. And he had another first-class game. It's Clyde Best.
On this week's Convex Conversation with me, broadcaster Helen Fospero, I'm joined by a true footballing legend, the first black superstar of First Division football in England.
But keeping his place in the number 7 shirt is an 18-year-old Bermudan, Clyde Best, a young man with exciting potential.
Clyde Best OBE was just 17 when he came to England from his home in Bermuda in 1968 to try out and then play for West Ham United. He scored more than 50 goals in the late 60s and early 70s, playing alongside 1966 World Cup greats like Sir Bobby Moore, Sir Geoff Hurst and Martin Peters. And he led the way for other top pros, including England defender Viv Anderson and Garth Crooks.
Match of the Day came on and I saw a black face and it was Clyde Best.
Good challenging by Clyde Best.
This big fella can play. He's black and he can play.
Best.
And I said to my mum and dad, I said, I want to be like him.
Again for Clyde Best, and it's found it!
Clyde is 75 years young, lives in Bermuda and is in London for the world premiere of Transforming the Beautiful Game, the Clyde Best Story. The moving documentary looks at his groundbreaking journey, the incredible highs, as well as the appalling lows of the racist chants and torment he put up with from the terraces. The film looks at the impact he's had and still has through the eyes of his family, former teammates and footballing giants who credit Clyde for giving them the courage to follow their dreams, including England and Arsenal striker Ian Wright.
When I started wearing the number 8 for Arsenal, it was in total honour of Clyde Best.
And across there towards Barnes! There's got in!
And later Clyde became revered in the North American Soccer League. Clyde, it's an honour to have you here in person. Welcome to London.
Thanks very much for having me, and it's a pleasure to be here with you. This reminds me of being in the front room. It's so very well organised and laid out.
It's very cosy, isn't it?
It
and laid
is
back.
very nice, very nice.
I told you it'd just be a chilled chat. It's really funny, Clyde, because having watched Transforming the Beautiful Game, I feel like I know you a little bit. I've seen your daughter interviewed, your brother, your family, footballing legends, all talking about your life. I know you're a very humble man, but how does it feel having this documentary made about your life and career?
Well, now that it's getting very close to be doing the documentary, it's finally sinking in. It's coming to a reality, and I'm really looking forward to it being shown, and I hope that the people that come enjoy it as well.
I wonder if it's given you maybe a little bit of time for reflection, because now, looking back, you can see the number of people who you've inspired and who you've helped on their way. Does that feel quite overwhelming in some ways to see how many people's lives were transformed by what you did here in the 60s and 70s?
Well, I'm glad that I had the opportunity to do something like that. I have always felt in life you got to help people along the way. You don't do things all for yourself and keep it all to yourself. You got to be willing to share and pass it on to other people. Before I left Bermuda, my dad told me, Clyde, you're going to England, you're going to play, but I want you to understand that you're not playing for yourself. You're playing for those coming after you. And that's the way I went about my journey, trying to do it for the guys coming up. And I never realized how many it was that are going to say that I, helped them along the way. But I'm just glad that I was able to do it. And it's an honor and a privilege. And I would do it all over again if I had to.
So even in those days, through your dad's words, were you aware of that responsibility perhaps that you had on those very, very young shoulders?
Well, I didn't look at it as responsibility. I just wanted to play football. And I couldn't play professional football in Bermuda. I had seen the 66 World Cup, saw Bobby, Martin, and Jeff. And I told my brother, we were sitting watching England play. And I told him, I'm going to play with those guys one day. And take it back a step further, I saw West Ham playing in 64 in the FA Cup finals against Preston North End. And I told him then, that team I'm going to play for one day. And once I got the tryout through Ron Greenwood, it was a no-brainer. I'm up and on the first thing, smoking out of Bermuda. Got an opportunity to go and play, and that's what I always wanted to do, and I'm not going to mess it up. I'm going to do what I have to do.
What do you think it was about West Ham in those days that made West Ham the team that you were determined to play for?
Well, seeing them on the big screen, television in '64, they played football, as we've always said, the right way. They like to knock it around. They like to play. They had good players, and it was just a perfect fit, so to speak. So I knew once I had gotten there, this is the place I want to be. And I didn't need to look at any other place because, the way the people at the club treated you, it was like one big happy family. And it was great to be in that family at the time I was there. And, I would always be indebted to the people from West Ham. And that goes from the lady that's washed our clothes to the groundsman to the people in the office. They treated the players like they were their own children, so I would always appreciate that. Then I take it a step further. I go to Miss Charles, the lady that first took me in. She never knew me from Adam, but she had a heart big enough and good enough to say, hey, young man, you're going to stay with me for the period. And I was supposed to stay only a couple of nights and end up staying for 4 or 5 years. That was my mom away from home. So the Clark Charles family, hey, they're unbelievable in my estimation. John and Clive were already at the club, so to be able to go to the club that had 2 guys there already, 2 black guys there already, was unbelievable. And Clive and I played in the same youth team. I was the one that was responsible for getting moved to America to play in the NASL, and he was a tremendous success, not only as a player, but as a coach.
I'm intrigued by this story, Clyde, because you came over here when you were 17 by yourself.
Yes.
Tell me the story of you getting off at the wrong tube, because this is how you ended up with that family, really randomly.
Yeah. Yes, it was something, I suppose it was a blessing in disguise. The Lord looked out for me, getting on the plane, coming all the way to England, getting off at Heathrow, nobody to meet me, making my way from Heathrow all the way to West Ham Station. I got off at West Ham Station, which I really should have got off at Upton Park, not realizing that Upton Park was 2 stops away. And I got off, and I was walking up and down, and an old man saw me, and he said to me, "Sonny, what are you doing?" And I said, "Look, I've come over for a trial with West Ham," and there was no one to meet me at the airport, so I thought the club would have been open today. He said, "No, they played yesterday, and nobody be at the club today. So it's a family across the park that I'm going to take you to, and we'll knock on her door and see what she says." And we done that, and we knocked on her door, and she opened up the door. She looked at me up and down to say, "Who's this big sod coming to the door?" And she took me in, and I was only supposed to stay a couple of weeks, and ended up staying for 4 or 5 years with her. And she was fantastic. She treated us and treated me like I was one of the 2 boys, her son. And she would tell people, "That's my son, and if you have problems, you got to come through me." And she defended us, and we done what we had to do, and carried herself in the right manner. And I know she was proud of us, yeah.
Oh, I'm sure she was. And as you say, somebody must have been looking down on you that day when you got off at West Ham. I mean, thank goodness in a way you got off at West Ham, because you had such a warm, loving family home here. And you were only about 17 years old, so you were still a kid. Which leads me to your poor mum. What did Mum think to 17-year-old Clyde heading off into the distance?
Yeah, she, didn't take it too well. She was crying at the airport, and my dad told her, "Hey, don't worry, he's going to be okay. He let him make his own way." And he was right, and the way it worked out, he was spot on. So he must have knew something that I didn't know, and let me go by myself. And I was able to find my way from the airport all the way up to West Ham to the child's house, and it worked out. I'm thankful that he gave me that opportunity, and the Charles took me in, and still friendly with them up until this day. Clive and John have passed on, but he has a sister, Rita. She's, I think, the only one living, and all the grandchildren and great-grandchildren. Usually when we meet, everybody comes and we reminisce about years ago.
Wow, you're absolutely family. What was Dad like? Was Dad a bit more no-nonsense growing
Yeah,
up?
he was a no-nonsense man. He ran the prison in Bermuda, casemates, and he was a nice man, but you had to come straight, and if you done something wrong, he would let you know, and he was a disciplinarian. Me and my brother knew that we couldn't do nonsense, and he told us, if you ever come to casemates to prison, you're going straight to dark cell. Don't ask for any favors because there will be none. So we knew it as an early age that we had to carry ourselves in the proper manner and behave ourselves. And we were okay because we knew we were going to go there because of what he told us. And a lot of people that I knew that worked there, they always tell me that he was a no-nonsense man. So he was in the prison for all his career in Bermuda.
And that love of football came from very young in Bermuda, didn't it? I mean, didn't you even kick a can down the street? That's how passionate you guys were in those days when you were little.
Yes, me and a friend of mine went to the same elementary school, and we loved to play football. And we picked up this can one morning and decided to dribble it and pass it going to school. And we'd done it and took it all the way to school with us. And we used to put it in the trees when we went to assembly and come back and pick it up after school and repeat the same exercise again, dribble all the way home, So that was an introduction to us. And what I will say is that in Bermuda at that time, we had a lot of good soccer players. I mean, some of the players were unbelievable. And we had an opportunity to watch them as well as playing against the British Navy guys when we were like 10, 12 years old, and they would see us on the sideline and say, hey, Sonny, come play for us, and that's how we learned. A friend of mine, he's here today, and he always told me, he said, Clyde, it was one of the sailor guys that said to me years ago, you see him out there, he's going to play in England one day. And look what happened. So that man knew something that I didn't know, and he picked it out right,
Was there a moment in Bermuda where you realised that you had the talent to take it all the way and become professional?
Well, I always knew that I wanted to be a professional. I knew that I could play because I was playing in the national team when I was like 15. And the only reason I knew I got in that team was because the guy that coached us, Graham Adams, was an English coach that we brought in to coach the national team, and he had known and done some courses with Ron Greenwood. So having that connection, he saw what he liked, what I had in Bermuda, and put me in the team, and I was a success with them. And he made a run to get me a trial in England. So he saw something that most people in Bermuda didn't see, because a lot of people in those days, they would tell you you're too young.
Yeah.
But I've always believed that if you're young enough and you're good enough, you should be given an opportunity, so age shouldn't really have a bearing on them.
And you were given an opportunity.
Yes.
You came, you did a successful trial. I think you were 18 when you made your debut for West Ham.
Yeah.
I don't know whether it's a silly question to ask, whether you can still remember the actual debut because you played so much, but do you have distinct memories of your debut and what it was like in the dressing room, getting ready and then heading out there?
Well, being at West Ham at that time, it was like a family. You got in the first team, everybody would come to give you information, give you advice and stuff like that. And when you had people like Bubby and Jeff and Martin, you just pricked up higher because you wanted to hear what they had to say. And that's the type of people they were. They never kept their knowledge to themselves. They shared it with all of us in the dressing room. And being selected that night, it was a Monday night, I think, and I wouldn't forget it because it was against Arsenal. And Roger Cross and myself were selected to play. And I remember going to the training ground, and Ron said to me, Clyde, you're not going to be training today. I want you to go home and get some rest. Get some rest, I'm saying, but I want to play and train with the guys tonight, today. He said, no, go home, and I want you to come to the stadium tonight. We're playing Arsenal. And I done exactly what he said, though when I went home, I couldn't sleep because I was so excited that I was going to be playing. And I went out there, and I think we done pretty well. We drew with Arsenal. I think it was 1-1 or 2-2. And I think Roger Cross scored the goals. but I played on the right-hand side that night, and it was a success because I was able to play for a few games more, and in those days, lots of times they would give you a stint and then give you a little break, so
Yeah.
I was able to get in, and he liked what he saw, and that's all he, she wrote, so to speak, and I was in, and one of the best days of my life to be given a shirt with 3 World Cup players. I mean, that blew my mind more than anything, to be able to play in the same team as those 3 after watching them on television lifting the World Cup, was unbelievable. And I would always be indebted to those guys because they helped me tremendously. Jeff, him and I were up front together, so I learned a lot from him. Martin would talk to me, about making runs up front, and always told me, because you got the speed, you got to use your head as well, because lots of times you run and you run offside, so he showed me how to run on the line and then curve in to make the run, and that would keep you on side. So it was a lot of knowledge passed around by those 3 to everybody at the club, so us young people at the club were privileged and honored to be in that esteemed company, because these guys were world famous at the time, especially Jeff and Bobby and Martin as well, from hoisting the World Cup in 66.
Of course they were, the 3 of them. I mean,
That's
really,
right.
It was kind of a West Ham World Cup in a way, wasn't it? With
Well,
3
that's-
players being critical to the success.
Well, that's all we got to crow about today, is that we won the World Cup. People still say it today. So it was nice to be in the company with those 3 because they were World Cup winners. And how many people in life can tell you, I won the World Cup?
I know, amazing.
Not many
It's so
people.
lovely to hear as well
Yeah.
that they were so generous spirited
Yes,
and
yes.
and really kind and looking after you and things. But what I can't imagine, Clyde, because I'm not a footballer, is I can't imagine what it feels like to come out of that tunnel. I can't imagine the crowds. I can't imagine what it feels like to score a winning goal. Can you take me there in a way as to what that felt like for you in those days?
Well, it was great to be able to score in goals for West Ham, and the West Ham fans are real passionate. I mean, a friend of mine was telling me last week, we played at Aston Villa, and he said he thought he was at our stadium, Olympic Stadium, because the West Ham fans were out singing the Aston Villa fans. We got beat, but he said he couldn't believe it, the enthusiasm of the people that support you. And they've always been that way. I mean, back in the day where we had the chicken run, and there was a little area where you run up against, and they would let you know when you were doing something wrong. And in no uncertain words, you were smart, you would listen to them, and you knew you had to get on your bike and pedal as fast as you could, because they would let you know that you were stinking up the field or not doing what you needed to do. And you wanted to prevent that from happening all the time, so you just went out and gave it 110% week in and week out. So it's a no-brainer in a sense, and if you want to be in that environment, you got to remember those people pay your wages, so you got to give them what they come to see, and that's to put on a good performance.
How much does West Ham still mean to you, Clyde?
Oh, they mean so much to me. I feel like breaking the television up when I see them losing, so I've still got it in my heart. It would probably go to my grave with it. I love the club. I love the area. The people in the East End are genuinely real nice people. I've come to meet and be in the company of most of my friends in that part of London, so I would always be indebted to West Ham for making me the person I am and giving me the opportunity that they gave me. And I'm just so glad to be a former West Ham player.
How did they shape you, do you think? Because you were young, you were still a teenager when you came over here.
Yeah, I was young, but I had already been traveling with men before, so it's a big difference when you're a youth team player to being in the big team with the men. So you know straight away how to carry yourself and behave. Only a fool's going to come in with a national team and be cocky and talk a lot and do stuff like that. You don't do that. You just sit back, do what you have to do, and let the guys pave the way for you, so to speak, show you and give you information. Because as a young player, you want to collect as much information as you can. And I was very privileged and lucky in the sense the players that I had, as you say, World Cup winners. Then we had a person like Jimmy Greaves coming to our club. Jimmy was another one, encyclopedia when it came to being a striker. So you get to play with people like that. You don't get to play with people like that often. It's like the first time I played with Pelé and Johan Cruyff. These guys, they're world beaters and unbelievable people as well as footballers. And I never forget the time I played with Johan Cruyff. And I played in Paris, Plot de France, and got this penalty. And I picked the ball up and I said to Johan, "You take the penalty." He said to me, "Clyde, I didn't get the penalty. You got the penalty, so you got to take it." So I was lucky enough to stick it up in the corner. And, you know, I was thankful. And this is the sort of people that you connect with when you're playing. Another time was in New York, Randall's Island. We from West Ham went over to play in New York this night, and Pelé was playing for Santos, and we tied 2-2. Pelé scored 2, I scored 2. So at the end of the game, he came to me and he said, "Clyde, I'm the king. You are now the prince." So I said to him, "Pelé, I got no problems with being a prince to you." Not many people get that opportunity. So these are the sort of people that you dealt with and played with and communicated with all those years ago. So I was blessed in a sense, you know.
You played in some exhibition matches as well later in your career with Pelé and became friends with him. What kind of guy was he like? I can't believe I'm asking you, what was Pelé like?
Pelé was unbelievable. First of all, a football player. He saw things on the pitch a lot quicker than most people. He can tell you and help you with running and way to go and where not to go. And he was just a genuinely nice person and a fantastic human being. And what a lot of people don't know and understand is that footballers are genuinely nice people. You very seldom meet a crazy footballer. You might meet one or two of them, but the majority of them are genuinely decent people and people that can mix and mingle and you don't have problems with. And I tell people all the time, the good thing about playing sport, you get to meet all sorts of people and all colors and all different races. And that's why Pelé labeled it the beautiful game, because the game belongs to all of us, not just one race of people or one group of people. It's a beautiful game for everybody.
It is a beautiful game, but sometimes there are parts of it that aren't so beautiful. And, you know, I'm talking about racism. Racism was rife in the time when you were playing for West Ham. And not wanting to dwell on it, Clyde, but I've got to ask you what that was like for you, because not always certain members of the crowd were very nice. How did you cope when the crowd were chanting unpleasant things? How did you deal with that?
Well, the first thing I used to say is that, hey, the people are paying their money. They're going to chant at you, and you got to be big and boastful and let them know that you're not going to put me off my game and deter me from doing what I have to do. I've got a job to do, and I'm going to do it to the best of my ability. The way to silence the crowd is to stick the ball in the back of the net. If you do that, those same ones that were calling your names are going to be disappointed because you've showed them what you can do. And that's the way I went about our trade, by doing stuff like that. You heard some of it, but you have to block it out. If you didn't, it could destroy you. And what team are going to want a person that's nervous and can't handle the pressure when things are going against you? You know, you got to be a big man, put your big pants on, pull yourself up and say, hey, you want to throw racist chants at me? I'm going to show you what I can do, and here's what I can do. And I remember doing that one day at Everton. They were chanting racist things at me. And I went to pick the ball up at the defense from Frank Lampard Sr. And I said to Frank, when you get it, just give it to me. I'm going to give him something special. And I dribbled from our box all the way to the half line. A boy named Terry Derricut was holding onto my shirt trying to pull me down. He couldn't do it. And I dragged him all the way, dribbling the ball to the goalkeeper. As the goalkeeper approached me, he said himself, and I said myself, and I just went one way, and he went down. Once he went down, I just chipped the ball with my toe right over his head. from that day on, ever since I went to Goodison, the people would applaud me.
They were cheering.
Because they saw what I can do. They knew I meant business. And at the end of the game, Joe Royal came to me and said, Clyde, that is the best goal I ever seen scored at Goodison. So hearing that from a person like Joe Royal, I knew I had to have done something pretty special.
So on the pitch, you tuned it out and you used your performance and your goal scoring to silence it. But Clyde, the young man going home, did you talk to your family about it? Did it bother you worry you?
You have a mindset.
Yeah.
You know, and you have to be able to block that stuff out. If I take that stuff at home with me, I'm not going to be able to sleep. Or, hey, I got more things to do. I got to wake up the next morning and go and perform all over again. So you can't afford to really let it get you down. And I know it still exists today, but what I will say to the young guys out there today, see if you can get some earmuffs, put them on, and just block it out. Eventually, they're going to come around to your way of thinking. Always give it your best you can, and then they're going to start applauding what you do. Just have to ignore them, people in the stadiums. You have to understand that today, with all the high tech and everything, you can pick up anything they want. They can do anything they want to you. But you got to be mentally tough and say, I'm not going to let them interfere with what I got to do. Because remember, you're not playing for yourself. You're playing for your team and all those fans around the world that like you. And when you go around the world, there are more people that are going to like the way you play than one or two of them crazy ones in the stands that are calling you, you know, racist names and chants and stuff like that. So it would be nice to be able to get rid of it one day. I couldn't tell you when it's going to happen, but this is where your mentality comes in. And you say to yourself, like the young boys today, I'm not playing for myself. I'm playing for somebody else.
It astounds me that we're still talking about it all these years on. And in fact, there was an incident, I think, at Newcastle only this weekend where they stopped the game because of it. It's extraordinary to me that all these years on, you know, we're talking the best part of 60 years on, and it's still, I just don't understand it, Clyde. I really don't.
Well, you know, a lot of us probably don't understand that as well, you know, but as I said, you got a job to do. You've got the fans to think of. You know, you look at the fans that travel all the way up to Newcastle to watch your team play against them. If they want to be disrespectful, stick it in the back of the net. When you go to the center, you stick your hand up to let them know that, hey, see what happens when you do that sort of stuff to me. I'm going to retaliate and show you by sticking it in. And you would silence them, you know. And I think the clubs and FIFA have to be harsher with their punishments when that sort of stuff is happening at clubs. Hey, hit the clubs in the pocket. It's like players, when you're late for training, they hit you in the pocket. When these people at their stadiums are doing that sort of stuff, they could be not only hurting themselves, but hurting their club too. Because if FIFA and the association come out and say, hey, we're going to hit you for millions of pounds, you know, then they might think twice about their behavior, because it's important. Everybody's can't take it the same way. There are some boys that are still maturing and find it tough, but if you really love this game, the game has got to be the winner, not individuals, you know.
There was one chilling moment where you had a threat of somebody throwing acid on you, which was a real indication, I think, of how much you were loved by your teammates and people like Jeff and Bobby. What happened?
Yeah, on every Friday, we trained at Upton Park, you know, done our bit. Then you look at the team sheet, you see what you're doing the next day, if you're in the first team or you're in the reserves or youth team. And this day I had to go upstairs and got my fan mail. When I came back downstairs, I opened up this letter, and there was this in the mail that they were going to throw acid in my face as I entered the field. Well, the guys on the team, they got the news, and we told Bobby and them, and they said, okay, we'll put a fix on that, and we're going to put you in the center. Everybody else is going to be on the outside of you. And as you come through the tunnel, if they throw anything, it's not going to be directed at you. And I must say, I have to thank them for being so brave to be able to willing to take this acid instead of me, you know. And lucky enough, the police were alerted and they knew, so they were there as well, supporting and protecting their guys on the outside of me. Lucky enough, nothing happened that day. I don't know if they got nervous or didn't come to the game or what, but nothing happened, and thank God it didn't. It was a happy ending in the end, and, that's what life's all about. You want to hear as many good things as you possibly can rather than bad things, and that is something that will always be there, but it was prevented. And it's like what we were talking earlier about kids not having drinking water and people not having enough food. This day and age, why are we still talking about stuff like this? Let's do something about it so it doesn't continue to happen. And if we can do things like that in life, to me, that's what makes me happy, is to helping the less fortunate and those that need help, because there are people in the world today that still need help. So we as a society have to find a way to try to mend those fences and to help these people to get what they need to get.
Ron Greenwood was a good manager, wasn't he? And credited, I think, with changing the face of British football.
Ron Greenwood was an excellent football coach. At the time, you don't realize it until you get out of it and you are able to look and see what he visualized. He visualized in the 60s and probably 50s that football in England needed an upgrade, and he wanted the game to be played like they played in Brazil and the continent and stuff like that. And he got us at West Ham to try to emulate that. It was tough because all the other teams didn't want to do that. They just want to get the result. They didn't care how they got it. That's the way they went about it. But he was a perfectionist in a sense where he wanted you to do and play the game the right way as he called it. That's without luck and these long balls and everything. He liked a lot of stuff played at the feet. And he always got us as young kids. I mean, we were playing indoors at West Ham in a little gym when we were like 14, 15. I was 17 when I came, but we still went inside to play foot soccer and keep the ball down a certain, below the waist. You couldn't kick it up in the air and stuff like that. So you had to learn to pass. And that was something that he visualized all those years ago. And if he was living today, he'd be very pleased with the way teams are playing today, because that's something he visualized all those years ago.
Somebody, apart from you, obviously, that I fell in love with in the documentary was Adi Coker.
Yes.
What a lovely man he seems. You're still great friends.
Yes.
And didn't he score 7 minutes into his debut when he was just 17?
Yes, he did. It was at Crystal Palace, and I'll never forget it because we took the bus from Upton Park to Crystal Palace, and Eddie was in jitters. He was shaking, and I said to him once we got our shirts on and went onto the field, I said, hey, treat this as another game. Crystal Palace were playing against, so why are you so upset? Get out there and enjoy life, enjoy playing. And he listened, and Bobby more or less gave him the same advice, go out there and play. You can do it. You wouldn't be here in the first place if they didn't think you could play. So go out and express yourself, do what you do best. And he was able to go score on his debut. And then 1 or 2 games later, we played Spurs, where we had 3 players. It was Clive, Charles, Eddie, and myself. And that was the first time that had ever happened, 3 black players at the same time on the field. I have good arguments with Brendan Batson all the time when I see him, because Brendan said about the 3 degrees.
Yes, of course.
I said, you might have been called the 3 degrees, but we were the 3 originals.
You were the originals. They had their pictures taken, didn't they, with the 3 degrees? There's a legendary
they got a statue
black and white photograph and statue as well.
Yes.
Oh my goodness.
So, but I told him, you weren't the first 3 black players to play in England. We were the first 3 black players. So your 3 degrees, I usually listen to them on record. That's the group. So I don't know what you're talking about. So remember, Clive, Charles, Eddie Coker, and Clyde Best were the first 3 black players to play in England at one time. And that was in, I think it was
72. I think it might have been 72.
It was 72.
And how cool that Clive, whose home you'd been welcomed into when you first arrived, was one of those 3 players.
Yeah. Well, Clive and I were in the same youth team, so we As a matter of fact, we were like brothers. We done everything together. His children, they call me Uncle Clyde up until today. You know, I don't see him as much because Sarah lives in America. Michael's still there too, but Sarah lives in another state now, so I don't get to see her much. But Michael, usually when I go to Portland, you know, we connect and get together and reminisce about the old days and his dad and everything. And it's like I tell him, I don't think a lot of people really realize the impact Clive Charles had on North America Soccer League, because he was a assistant coach, I think, at the World Cup in France the last time they had it there. And he was with the U.S. team, and he had a college team, and he coached women. He's one of the first guys I knew that coached women and won championships with his University of Portland.
And did you help bring him in? Because after 7 or so years at West Ham, you went to America.
Yes, I went to America.
For the Tampa
Bay Rowdies.
Tampa Bay Rowdies.
Right,
I love that name.
Right.
And then the Portland Timbers.
Portland Timbers.
Yeah, which is that where he came along?
He came along to me in Portland. I was in Holland playing with Feyenoord at the time, and I got this phone call, and he said, "Hey, Clyde Bestie, I want to come to America with you." I said, "Okay, let me speak to the coach," who was Don Makeson, the next player from Sheffield Wednesday at the time. And he said, "Yeah, let me speak to Don and see what he says." So I phoned him up, and he remembered Clyde from playing against and seeing him play for West Ham. And he was at Cardiff City, and he had saw him play, and he said, "Yeah, I'll take him. Tell him I want him to come." So I gave him the number, and they talked. And the next thing I knew, Clyde was on the plane. I think he got there before me because I was in Holland playing, and he was in America when I got there. So him, his wife, and 2 kids came over, and they made Portland, Oregon their home. I mean, he ended up dying in Portland, and it's funny, when Eddie and I went to see the grave, that's the first time, because the day he got buried, I couldn't fly out of Bermuda because there was a hurricane hanging around, and they canceled all the flights. So I wasn't able to go to the burial, so I had to go to his gravesite when I was in Portland, and it was a bit touching, and Eddie and I both, you know, shed a few tears, and, you know, because, you know, he was a good friend of ours, you know, and to not have him here now, it's still tough, but that's a part of life we all have to go through, and you accept that and do the best, and just tell him, if you're up there looking down on us, we still love you, and do the best you can.
I'm sure he's looking down on you. Was America for you an exciting ride? Because I think when you first went over, the crowds were reasonably small, and then they grew very quickly, didn't they?
Yes, well, once Pele, Beckenbauer, Johan Cruyff, all those people got involved, and it mushroomed into, in Tampa, we probably went from, say, 2,000, 1,500 people till 50,000, just like that. And that's once we played the Cosmos and Pele, and as you say, the Cosmos had a entourage of world-class players, you know what I mean? Georgie Canellia, then Reisberg, and you had the Nieskens, Franz Beckenbauer, who doesn't want to play to watch them people play, you know? So in America, you know, they had an opportunity to see those people's careers for a large period of their lives at the end of the career. And hey, we all done wonders. Rodney Marsh came over to play with us in Tampa. Rodney still lives there today. So we all helped to shape soccer in America. And when you look and see what it's like today, knowing that you had something to do with that makes you feel good, because we all contributed in our fashion and form, and that's why soccer is where it is today in America.
And you're back now, home in Bermuda.
Yes, I'm back in Bermuda.
Where you started out in life. And do you miss this competitive sporting world? I mean, obviously, it's a short career, really, isn't it?
Yeah,
compared with most careers.
Most careers, yes.
But are you still sort of actively interested in following football? And
I watch it. I mean, the Premier Division, I watch it every week. I mean, if West Ham's playing, I mean, it makes no difference who's playing. I just want to see the game and the quality of football. I'm not so much involved now. As I say, being 75, what more can I do now? So I stay on the sideline, let them do what they have to do. If I see any young kids that are looking to get a good education and play football, I try and help them. And we have 1 or 2 kids from home now that we've helped come to England to go to school. So as a matter of fact, I have 2 nephews now that are over here playing and in school. And I stress to them all the time is that what I want you to understand, football is for part of your life. Education is for your entire life. So make sure you get a good education. And that's the way we go about trying to help our kids at home right now that want to go abroad to get an education.
Those are very fine words to end our podcast on. I know you haven't seen all of the documentary, well, not the final version of. I think it's an emotional roller coaster. It made me cry in parts.
I didn't mean for that to happen to you, but I'm glad that you enjoyed it.
It's an incredible story, Clyde, and it really is a privilege to have you here in London, to meet you in person, to hear your thoughts about those days, but also thoughts about what's going on in our world today. So thank you very much, and enjoy the premiere.
Thanks very much for having me, and I hope you get a chance to see it again.
I do, I know, I hope I will. You've been listening to football legend Clyde Best, subject of a fantastic new film transforming the beautiful game, The Clyde Best Story. Download and subscribe to our series at convex.podbean.com or search The Convex Conversation on Spotify, Apple or wherever you listen to yours. We're taking a short break, but there are more than 250 episodes of The Convex Conversation to enjoy. You can find us on Spotify, Apple or wherever you listen to yours. I'll be back soon with another inspirational guest. I'm not sure that it's going to have quite the laugh that Clyde has got, a wonderful warm laugh there. So join me then.